Thank you all for joining us for the Thesis and Dissertation Process, Steps for Formatting, Review, and Common Mistakes workshop. Today joining us, we have Dr. Jennifer Stevens, Thesis and Dissertation Manager. She's going to discuss how to understand the formatting review process, understand where to seek information regarding the format review process, and how your format submission properly to avoid common mistakes and pitfalls.
Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for having me. Let me go ahead and share my screen. I have some slides to go over today. All right. And thank you for the wonderful introduction, Shante. So like Shante said, I am the Thesis and Dissertation Formatting Manager. Happy to be here today with you all to go over kind of the whole process, what this looks like, whether it's your thesis or dissertation or doctoral project. And so let's see what we are going to go over today. So first I'll be talking about how and when you'll submit your document for format review. It's something that all students who are completing a thesis or dissertation have to do, submit to the grad college. So we'll talk about when exactly you should start thinking about doing that or what to expect. I'll go over some of the resources we have for you that will help you to properly format your document. And then I'll kind of walk you through the process of once your document is submitted, what exactly you can expect. Because again, most of you haven't gone through this process unless you did it for your thesis, then it will be the same. But just in case, we'll kind of go through, what that looks like. And then finally, I'm going to go over a couple of our most common formatting issues that we see. And I did share the slides with the Grad Academy, so they'll be able to give these to you. So do take notes and everything, but you'll always have this to go back to if you have any questions. So let's get started and jump in. So first, after you have your thesis, dissertation, or doctoral project defense, you'll want to go ahead and complete any edits that are required by your committee. This is common for most students that there might be something that you'll have to take out or add. So always be sure to take care of all of those different comments that they have for you. Then once you have your final document, you'll want to go through and check your document using the different resources that the grad college provides you. And I'll go over those with you on the next slide. And you'll want to just make sure that all of the edits that you are aware of or that you can make are completed before you submit your document for official format review. I always tell students the more prepared you are before you submit your document, the smoother the process will be. And we really try and do our best to make this as least stressful as possible. We know just writing these documents, right, and putting this all together is such a huge process. But the whole point, right, or one of the main points of having everyone go through this is that once you have your final document that's ready to be uploaded to ProQuest in the repository, that if someone looks it up, it's very professional and organized and clear, and really reflects the hard work that you put into it. So hopefully it is, something that will end up helping you through this whole process and really kind of finish it off in that polished way. So that's just kind of the why behind why we have everyone go through this step of the dissertation or thesis process. So here are some of our different resources that the grad college offers students to help with the formatting process. So first we have our formatting manuals. I have these different links hyperlinked in the PowerPoint, so you can always go and just use those to click and go to our website. But if you go down to number 5, organization of thesis and dissertation, we actually just recently changed it so that it says formatting manuals or formatting assistance manuals or something like this, just to make it a little more obvious to students. But here you'll find a repository of different documents that will help you in a step-by-step way for each section of your final document. So whether it's the cover page or the abstract or the references section, we have all of those laid out for you so that you have the tools that you need to make it properly formatted. And another tip is that if you go on there and look at all of the different manuals, it might be kind of overwhelming because, again, you'll see one for each different section. So what I suggest to students is to kind of take a look if you think you're struggling or might be struggling in one section and just kind of get clarification and kind of work through them that way rather than sit there and go through each and every manual. But we do have some great resources on there for you. We also have some YouTube formatting videos. So if you're a more visual learner and want to see how it's done in real time, we have those YouTube videos up that are also linked to the Grad College YouTube channel. I have the link there for you as well. And then always feel free if you want to double check your document or you need help with how to properly format something on there, to set up a one-on-one thesis and dissertations formatting office hours appointment. So this is where you'll typically be working with myself, and I'll review your document and kind of walk you through any changes that you're not sure about or unclear on. So that resource is always available to you. And you can always feel free to send an email as well to the gradtd@unlv.edu inbox. And if you want to have someone on our team just kind of do a visual check and, answer some questions you might have, we definitely do that as well. So again, we try and provide the most resources that we can so this process goes very smooth for you and isn't stressful. Again, we know you've been working so hard on these documents that we're here to help. We don't want to try and add another layer of stress to this whole experience. Okay, so now that we've kind of gone over a couple different things about, kind of when to start looking at this and how we have some of these resources available to you, now we'll go over how you're going to submit your final document. So you've had your defense, you've taken a look at your final document alongside with the resources and made, as many corrections as you can. And then you'll go to our website, that Grad College/thesis. And here down under number 10, you'll see where it says format review. And there's a hyperlink that says submission website. So when you click on that, it will take you to a portal where you will upload the final PDF of your final document. It will also ask you for some information like your name and your chair's name and email address. And this is all just so we can communicate with you during the process, but really simple and easy. Again, you'll want to save your final document as a PDF. And this way, while the reviewer is going through your paper, there's no way that they can make any changes or corrections on accident. So we always ask that you send that in that PDF version. All right. So once you submit that final document to the portal, you'll receive an email, a confirmation email that our team has received your document and that it's been assigned to a reviewer. And typically you can expect to hear back from us in about 4 business days. Depending on when you submit, it might be a little quicker, or if it's at the very end of the semester when everyone is submitting, it might take a little bit longer. But you can always feel free to reach out, just to kind of get a status update, check in with us. But again, typically it's about a 4-day turnaround to hear from us. And when you hear from us, your reviewer will send you an email, and attached will be a checklist that looks just like this image on the right. And where that arrow is pointing, Your reviewer will put the number of the section where you'll have some changes to be made. So as you can see here, it'll have like number one cover page. And each different section of the document that we review has a different correlating number. And then at the bottom of that section one, the reviewer will outline for you what exactly you need to change. So they'll put comments in there like, please add a space between your name and by on the cover page, or please make sure your title is double spaced and things like this. So we do our best to try and make it as clear as possible on what exactly needs to be changed and how to do that. All of our sections have the manuals, formatted manuals linked at the top. So that way it's kind of a quick guide that you can just click on and have access to that resource to kind of help you make those changes if necessary. And again, throughout this entire process, always feel free to email us and, ask some questions or set up a one-on-one thesis and dissertation formatting office hours appointment. We're more than happy to help you if you need assistance in making those changes and getting it to the place it needs to be for the grad college. So again, your reviewer will let you know with this checklist what exactly needs to change. And then you will make any corrections to your final document. And this will be kind of a back and forth process with you and your reviewer via email. And it may involve, one round, it might be 2 rounds, maybe 3. It just kind of depends on, again, the shape your paper is in when it's submitted. And how well you're making those adjustments as you're going through the formatting review process. But once you do, you will get an email that looks similar to this from the graduate college, letting you know that you've received formatting approval and that everything looks good to go. And then when we send you that email, that format approval email, we CC your RPC coordinator. So that stands for retention, progression, completion. And they're the individuals that will be checking all of your paperwork on Grad Rebel Gateway to make sure that you have all of your different forms in and ready to go. So like your culminating experience form, and that it's been signed by all your committee members and all that good stuff. And then once they check that, they make sure everything is in, they'll take your final document and insert the approval page for you. And so you'll see in the final versions, if you've looked up any in our archive on digital scholarship, that that cover page should be almost exactly the same for every student, maybe a different font or something. But in general, every UNLV paper should have that similar formatting. So you'll have your cover page, and then that next page, when people see it, will be your approval page, where it outlines, your name, the degree you're receiving, the members of your committee, and all these different things. So I would say, take a look at digital scholarship also to kind of get an idea of maybe some of the other documents from your department or your discipline, just to get an idea of what that final piece will end up looking like. And then your RPC coordinator will send you an email, which will include the final document with the approval page. And then once you let them know that, okay, I'm good to go, everyone's name looks correct, everything seems correct, then they will send you the instructions to upload to ProQuest. And as it says there at the bottom, you can definitely celebrate after that, because that is the very, very final step. So all the way, through your writing of your document and your defense, there's so many different steps. But once you upload that final document to ProQuest, that is it. You are finished. So you can definitely be excited and celebrate that. Oops. All right, so that's kind of a really quick overview on what the formatting process looks like. It's kind of this back and forth via email with your reviewer. We went over some of the different resources that we have available if well, one, that you can use before you submit to prepare your document. And then two, once you receive your revisions checklist, using those different tools and resources to edit your paper, to make sure everything is how the reviewer wants it to be for your final upload. And then today, I'm going to go over two of the most common formatting mistakes that we see as reviewers. There's obviously lots of different things that individuals might have formatted not correctly when we get the documents, but we do see a lot of patterns and similarities and things that students do that need to be changed and updated. So for today, I'm going to go over the cover page and then table and figure spacing in your document. Okay, so outlined here on the left are the different sections of your cover page. And I just used my dissertation cover page, so we have an example, but you'll want to make sure that you have your title in all caps. If your title is more than one line, they want it double spaced and also in the shape of an inverted triangle so that your longest line is at the top and the shortest line is at the bottom. So you always kind of want to double check that. And one thing to note that you might not notice as you're just glancing at the sample is that each of these sections should have at least one line space of blank space in between them. So even between your title and by or by in your name. So everyone will have that. Next, you will have your legal name as listed on My UNLV. So sometimes if maybe you go by a nickname that you have or your middle name or an alternative name, that's totally fine. You just want to make sure that the name that's listed in My UNLV is correct, because that's the name that we will be using to check your cover page for your final document. And that's also what they'll be using for your degree when you get your degree. So definitely double check that if you have any question about how it's listed. And then under your name, you're going to have your previous degrees listed in chronological order. So you'll start with your bachelor's degree and then master's if appropriate, and just make sure they're in that chronological order again. And you'll see on the first line, you'll have the name of the degree. So what degree you received. The second line, it will be the institution that it was received from. And then the final line will be the year. So you'll do that for each of those. And then underneath that, the phrasing for this is very important and very particular. And so it'll either say a dissertation submitted in partial fulfillment of the requirements for thee, or it will say a thesis submitted in partial fulfillment of the requirements for thee. And again, if you look through the different examples in our archive or look at some past students who have graduated, you'll notice that the O on that second line is lowercase, and it should always be split in those two lines. They want everyone's document to have that same look and that same formatting. So always just kind of double check those small things. And there's so many components on the cover page that I think this is one of the reasons why it kind of has the most common issues when we see students' final documents. So it's not necessarily hard or difficult in terms of skill, right? You don't need to be like an expert in Word to make these changes or to do this, but there's just so many little pieces that you want to make sure that you have in the correct order and in the correct spacing and all that good stuff. So after they have that statement there, then you'll list the degree you are receiving. And then under that, you'll add some more space. And here in this next section, you'll have three different components. You have the department, your college, and then the graduate college. Now, linked to our cover page manual, we have it listed out every different degree, how it should look on your cover page. So for example, Some students will not include the college name or the department name. So please check on there in that cover page manual to see that all three of these are correct. If maybe you're not certain, sometimes there's name changes that take place with the department or college. But you'll always want to have that there with the graduate college at the very end. And then in that final section, you're going to have University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Make sure the comma is there after Nevada. That's a big one that people forget sometimes. And then under that, it's going to be the date that your degree was conferred. So everyone's document will have either May, August, or December for that date. A lot of times, let's say you have your defense in April for the spring or March. Students will put like March of that year or April of that year. And we're in the fall now, so we'd be using December. So even if your defense was in October, November, you'll always want to have that December 2025, right? Or if you're doing it for the spring, it would be May 2026. Okay, and the next thing I wanted to go over is a really common mistake that students have when they have tables or figures in their document. And really, we see documents that have all different amounts. Some don't have any, right? Maybe a paper like a creative writing might not have any tables or figures, but some students might have like one or two, and some might have like 30 or 40. So it really just depends on what your document looks like, how much time it will take you to kind of make those adjustments to get it to the correct way that the graduate college wants it. But again, I would suggest that if you have, a lot of tables and figures or things like this, you'll just want to start taking a look at this early on. So like maybe doing the formatting before your defense even, just to make it easier on yourself at the very end. That way you're not having to go back and make all of these adjustments at one time. If you're doing it kind of as you're completing your final paper, it does make it a lot easier with some of these different changes. So for tables and figures, the main thing is that we want to make sure if there is text above or below the table or figure, that there's two double space lines of blank space. So your whole document should be double spaced. So let's say, for example, you go to the end of this first sentence above the table, your cursor would be placed after that period of the sentence, and then you literally will just hit enter or return twice, and then that will give you the proper spacing. Sometimes students will get feedback back because it will look like not enough spacing, because they might have it in single space. And our reviewers have very astute eyes, right? They see so many of these documents, they can tell right away, like, oh, no, that's not it. This is not correct. So you always want to make sure that not only do you have those two blank lines, but that they're the double spacing, right, that we need. And along with having that spacing above or below the text, if there's two tables that are next to each other, how we see on the figure on the right, you'll want those two blank lines of spacing in between the different tables and figures. And that's very common. Some students might have, depending on the size of the table or figure, they might have two or three on one page. And if, for example, let's say table 2, you entered this spacing above it and half of it goes to that next page, we would want you to move the whole thing to the top of that next page so that it's all together for your reader. And this rule or this kind of practice comes from our instructions from the editor, right? We want to make sure that when a reader is going through your final document, or publisher, excuse me, not editor, for uploading to ProQuest. What we want to make sure that when someone is reading your final document, they'll be able to scroll through the pages and see that your tables and figures are standing out clearly. Another note that's actually not on here, but just going along those lines, you are allowed to have smaller text or font in your tables and figures, but 8-point font is the minimum. And again, this is all about readership for your readers of the final document. You know, you've spent so much time creating these tables and gathering this data and information that we want to make sure that people can really read it clearly. So while you can use a smaller size font than the rest of your text, you just want to make sure you're not going smaller than that 8-point font. And then, like I said, if you have text underneath your tables or figures, you want to make sure that you have those two double-spaced blank lines. And one kind of rule of thumb, if you're ever like curious or confused, the reviewers prefer more space than not enough. So if there's not enough space, you'll definitely get an instruction back or a feedback that you need to add that spacing. But like I said, if part of the table is running onto that second page or there's not enough spacing, just move it over to that next page, because they would rather you have more space and be able to see those stand out clearly than have it all scrunched together. Okay, and kind of just like a final, again, reiteration, if you have any questions at all before, during, or even after the format review process, we are here to help. So always, always, always feel free to reach out to that grad.td@UNLV email address, and we will help you with any questions or concerns that you have. And that's definitely not all of the different formatting mistakes that we see made, right? Every student is going to be a little bit different. But again, those are some of the kind of most common things or major issues that we see popping up.
Okay, so before we wrap up, I would just like to thank Dr. Jennifer Stevens for being here today and sharing her expertise and time. And thank you to all of our participants for joining us today.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.